Good evening. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the March 22nd, 2022 Millis Public School Committee meeting. I will take attendance. I am here. Mr. Conroy, Mr. Catalano.
Present.
Ms. Gibbons is not here. Ms. Roach. Here. Our teacher rep. Okay, and our student rep. Good. Hello. And Mr. Mullaney.
Here.
Okay. This meeting is being recorded and can be viewed on Mondays at 7 p.m. on Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 37. All meeting videos are also posted on the Millis Public Schools website under School Committee. All videos are also available on YouTube. All school committee minutes and agendas can be found on the school committee page of the Millis Public School website. Persons wishing to speak during open session must sign in before the meeting starts. Comments are not to exceed 3 minutes in time. Individuals may not name students, staff, or parents. All topics for discussion must be limited to those items listed on this evening's agenda, and all comments must be directed to the chair. The committee may not respond to public comments. It shall be at their discretion to discuss issues at a later date, and all times are approximate. We're going to begin our evening with our fiscal year 23 public hearing.
Yeah, and as I see Ben behind me,
Yeah,
I'm wondering, do we want to
I
have
was-
Ben?
I was wondering that too.
Ben
Okay.
wants to stay for the public hearing on
You
the
want to hear
budget.
about the budget, Ben? Okay, why don't you come up and do your student
He was
report?
just saying how busy he is.
Yeah, and then we'll start the public hearing after. Oop.
So spring sports started up this week, so good luck to everyone in that. That's tennis, spring track, baseball, softball, and volleyball. Also congrats to winter sports for ending up there. The Addams Family production is getting ready to put on their performance. That will be April 1st, 2nd, 8th, and 9th, so make sure to see one of those. I am in it, so please come. Sophomore MCAS took place this week, so the halls were a little bit quieter for once, as sophomores got their first taste of MCAS in a little while. March Madness in the school continues as we continue with daily themes for our day. This Friday I know is newspaper day, but we've had wacky hair days, lucky days on St. Patrick's Day wearing green, so it's been fun to get through the month with daily themes. And finally, senior project season is upon us, so stay tuned for any senior projects, announcements, and days that anyone is willing to observe.
Great, thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Bob.
Hey Ben, are you Gomez in the play?
I am Lucas.
Lucas. Okay. So,
All right.
and I'd also like to add the middle school had their science fair, their STEAM fair last week, and just as kind of fittingly enough, the last event we had before the pandemic, the last public event we had back in March of 2020 was the STEAM fair. So after a hiatus, the STEAM fair was back. And
Good.
Oh, excellent.
That's
yeah,
good.
middle school.
That's excellent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the kids did a fantastic job.
All right, would you like
Okay,
to-
so for the FY23 budget, first of all, I'd like to thank the committee and the community for their generous support of all our schools and our students. And I'd like to start off the presentation by talking a little bit about the return on investment that Millis has realized from the support of our schools. International recognition. Each one of our schools, Clyde Brown, the middle school, and the high school, recognized as international Spanish academies. And we are the only district in Massachusetts to have international academies at the elementary, middle, and high school level. And we truly fantastic partnership. And again, the community, this committee has been so supportive of our efforts in that realm. Some local recognition, MCAS results from last year. Just about every grade level is outperforming the state average for percent of students meeting or exceeding grade level standards. And one notable, particularly notable performance last year was in the grade 10 English Language Arts MCAS percent meeting or exceeding expectations. Millis High School actually came in tied for third in the state for the percentage meeting or exceeding. Boston Latin and Dover Sherborne were tied at first with 96%. Millis and the Bromfield School were tied at third, and Lexington kind of nipping at our heels. But you can see pretty good company there for our grade 10 students. And they just had their first day of MCAS today, as Ben mentioned. So, this year's sophomores have some, there's a high bar in place for this year's sophomores. Other recognition, all three of our schools have been recognized by niche.com as best schools in their rankings of schools throughout the United States. The Millis Middle School was recognized by U.S. News and World Reports as one of the top middle schools in Massachusetts, and this is the first year that they've had rankings of middle schools, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. However, Millis Middle School was recognized for their performance by U.S. News and World Reports. Millis High School received a College Success Gold Award from greatschools.org for acceptance to and achievement in once they get into college. So our kids are getting accepted to high-performing and challenging universities and colleges, and they're staying there. They're persisting in their college education. Millis High School was recognized by U.S. News and World Reports once again among the high schools in the United States. And Millis High School was recognized by Boston Magazine in its annual ranking of the best high schools in Boston. Another recognition from the advanced placement, the College Board advanced placement exams. Millis was one of 12 districts in Massachusetts to have over 30% of the school enrolled in at least one advanced placement course. And our advanced placement courses are basically offered to sophomores, juniors, and seniors. The bulk of them are juniors and seniors, but we do have AP Human Geography, which sophomores can take. So high participation and high performance. So of the schools with 70% or above passing rate, only 30% have enrollment such as us. So these are the 12 districts that met both of those benchmarks. And again, some pretty good company there that Millis is with. And getting back to the Boston Magazine, again, to talk about return on investment. Boston Magazine included in its Best of Boston edition this year for schools, the 10 best schools for bang for your housing buck. And this is the 10 high schools whose Boston Magazine high school rankings most significantly surpass the ranking of their median house price. So again, to talk about return on investment, again, the performance of our students is being recognized. To get into the actual budget now, just the budget timeline. We've been, since December, the administrative team has been working on looking at our costs and input on what we're going to need for FY23. And I'd like to thank Terry Wiggin for all his work on this. I'd like to thank the business staff, Shalene Volpe, Kathy Villani, Ann Walsh, and I'd also like to thank Jody Cleary for their work in getting all these materials together, helping us get all the data we need to present this budget to you this evening. So that was going on throughout December and January. As you know, in February, we had several updates on the budget and the budget estimates and the red, white, and blue sheets that you're so familiar with Terry coming in with a different iteration every meeting. So we've been working at that. Obviously, tonight is our public hearing on the budget. We're going to present to FinCom tomorrow night. As the picture becomes clearer in the months of March, April, and May, we'll continue to make adjustments, and we are hopeful that the picture will become clear with the actual state aid and elements of that to our budget. And then we'll present our budget as part of the town budget at town meeting in May, and then we will approve the final budget and recast line items in June. And any budget is a reflection of the core values of the institution which the budget serves, and certainly the Millis budget, Millis Public Schools budget that we're proposing supports the core values of our schools. And so, just to quickly go through these guiding principles, we want our budget to support the highest quality educational programs and services possible. We want it to fund curriculum development initiatives, instructional resources, programs, and the supports that we need to serve all our students. Our budget goal is to provide staffing levels that support reasonable class sizes at all levels and maintain current services. Support salary adjustments and our contractual obligations, fund the various state and federal mandates that we are bound by, and to maintain our buildings and ground for supporting programming and student and staff safety. Some background on historical data on our past budgets. This is PPE is per pupil expenditure, and this is the most recent data from the DESE, and it's data from FY20, so it's not from last year, it's from FY20, but this gives you a sense of where our per pupil spending is in comparison to some of our neighboring districts. And you can see, where we compare with neighboring towns. I will say that in the past 10 years, enrollment has declined, and as our enrollment has declined, our per pupil expenditure has gone up. And so this, from FY19 to FY20, we had an increase, a 1.3% increase in our per pupil expenditure, and we were slightly above the neighboring district average of $16,609. Our average was $16,921. And this is in district. Out of district, again with neighboring districts, some of our including our out of district students. This includes kids who are in public special education schools, private special education schools, and collaboratives. And you can see our average, our per pupil expenditure for out of district is $17,466, slightly below the state average and slightly below the neighboring district average of $18,000. The DESE also has its district analytic review tool, otherwise known as the DOT comparisons, and that's when they compare our district to districts most similar to us in terms of grade span, total enrollment, and special population subgroups. And so the schools, the districts rather, that are collected together in state comparisons are West Bridgewater, Lunenburg, Abington, Douglas, Georgetown, Sutton, Air, Millbury, Millis, and Maynard. And you can see where we rank with our DOT comparison schools. The DOT average per pupil expenditure is $15,167. When we look at the out of district, the DOT average per pupil expenditure is $16,033, and again, Millis is at $17,466 per pupil expenditure. And again, just a reminder, this is FY20 figures. And as I mentioned, our enrollment had been declining for the past 10 years. Last year, we believe, was the trough, and this year we increased tuition slightly. The figure on the graph says 1,175 pre-K students. Actually, with that figure is from October. Our most current figure is 1,186. In March, we've had a few move-ins from into Clyde Brown, and I'll be reporting that during the school committee meeting. In our projected enrollment, we're according to the projections from NESDEC, the New England School Development Council, we are expected to increase enrollment slightly over the next 10 years, and they're predicting a 9% increase in enrollment. And then by grade, the enrollment by grade, this gives us a pretty good picture of where some of our larger classes are and some of the issues that might impact staffing, where if you have a small, a small group of third grade students, you might say, well, why do you need 4 third grade teachers? Well, because next year we're going to have a larger third grade. So this kind of gives you an indication of the enrollment by grade is not, there's no kind of pattern there. One thing about, the declining enrollment, it has provided class sizes that support personalized learning, support project-based learning, and support addressing individual student needs. Some things that were very difficult to do during the pandemic, but as we have entered the spring, we're able to do a lot more of those things that we weren't able to do. And so you notice grade 4 has our largest class size in the enrollment in the elementary school, but their class size is at 20.6 because we have 5 grade level teachers in that grade, and the other grades have 4. Next year we'll have 5 grade 5 teachers. And I would also note that the kindergarten class size average of 22.5 is pretty high for a kindergarten class. We have a lot of kids in our kindergarten, and that's a figure we want to watch to make sure the class size at the kindergarten level is appropriate for that age, and we are able to support that. I'd also say at the other end of the spectrum, when you look at the high school, the 15.5 class average, it's a little different at the high school level when you're talking about class averages, because you could have a special education class with 5 students in it, and we have some classes, we have a couple classes with 30 students in them, we have some in the high 20s. So that's just the average, but depending on the class you go into, you'll see a range in the high school. School choice, we, as you all know, we depend greatly on school choice funds. Those funds have been so important in supporting our program staffing and services. You'll note that this year we're down about 9 students in school choice from 88 to 79. We get roughly $5,000 per choice student, but there are a lot of factors that go into the final amount we receive. How long the student's been in Millis. You know, we have choice kids move in, we have choice kids move out, we have kids who are choice students who move into Millis and are no longer choice students. So there's a lot of variables there. Also some special education costs get rolled into it if a choice student is a special ed student. So the estimate from the state in January was that we'll be receiving about $414,941 dollars in choice funds from the state for FY23. Out-of-district enrollment also impacts our budget and our per pupil expenditures. This year at TriCounty we have 51 students. And at Norfolk Aggie we have 11. So we can see the Tri-County enrollment has trended down a little bit, and the Aggie has been a little more consistent. And so those enrollments in those schools impact our budget and our per pupil expenditure. We also have students. Okay, it changed on my computer, but it wasn't changing on the screen. So these are students who do not attend Millis public schools and attend private home and charter schools. So private schools in this case are schools like Severian, Montrose, Ursuline, Bishop Fee, schools like that. So currently we have 70 students in the district of Millis students attending private schools. We have 18 homeschooled students, and that's a slight increase. And I believe for some of those students, it's a function of wanting to continue with either remote learning or concerns over the pandemic. And our charter school enrollment has stayed pretty consistent. We have 5 Millis residents enrolled in charter schools. And at any time, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, or you can wait till the end. For FY22, things that supplement our budget, we have grants that we receive every year, although the amounts vary every year. So we have the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act funds, in the amount of $323,073. Title I is a grant we get for the percentage of our students considered in high needs, economically disadvantaged. So we get about a little under $40,000 this past year. We get a grant for supporting teacher instruction and professional development of $17,393. We have a student support grant of $10,000. So the district total of regular grants is $389,958. And we also have circuit breaker, and Mr. Wiggin, as you know, Mr. Wiggin gave a lesson on that a couple meetings ago. And for this current year, our circuit breaker funding was $422,254. And then as a result of the pandemic, we received a number of one-time grants this year to help keep the school safe, keep the school clean, and address learning loss, learning gaps, and a variety of other issues presented by the pandemic. So you can see the IDEA grant, so that was a grant targeted at the special ed populations, early childhood, and the ARP is the American Rescue Plan. And so we got numerous grants there. ESSA 1, elementary and secondary school early relief. We have ESSA 2 and ESSA 3. We had ESSA 1 in FY21. So we got $136,495 in ESSA 2 funds, $284,290 in ESSA 3 funds. We mentioned at, I think it was our last meeting, that Maureen Knowlton was able to secure an accelerating literacy grant in the amount of $119,166. That money will be used this year to implement the literacy program that we've been working on for the past couple years. And late breaking news, Friday she found out that we received an additional $10,000 for teacher training. So good news. We also got a grant, an earmark from the state for the purchase of hybrid van in the amount of $52,000. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to purchase that van because of supply chain issues and inventory issues. So Mr. Wiggin is working on allowing us to, keep hold of that money until we can pull the trigger on a vehicle. So in one-time grants, we got a total of $661,871 in one-time money that helped us get through and is helping us get through this challenging school year. And now we get to the FY23 budget. The target of a 4% increase would be a budget of $17,860,576. That would include an expenditure increase of $298,414, a 13.2% increase. This 4% budget would also include $261,975 in cuts. So this would not be a level service number. The 17.86 million is not a level service budget. It assumes $100,000 in prepaid tuitions and/or grant funding. Positions funded through those ESSA grants that I just mentioned would be eliminated. A level services budget, and a budget I would advocate, would be $18,122,551, which would be a 5.53% increase. We have capital improvement and warrant article requests totaling $177,164. Marijuana impact fund request totaling $174,262.
Well, can I wrote some notes, but I think on this one, I think the story is our level, and it may be semantical, but I think from a processing standpoint, our level service budget is $18,122,551, right?
Right, correct.
Based on the 4%, we can't do that, right? The 4%
would be right. We would not be offering level services.
Would be 1786.
Yeah.
And in order to get there, this is what we have to do.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe that's just the way I'm reading it, because I think you're burying the lead that the level service is 18.1.
Yes, correct.
So I'll open it up, or it's not me to open up, but I think we should put that up top.
At the top.
Because I think that's the story to be told. We're not doing a level service budget next year.
If we do the 4%.
If we do the 4%, which we agreed to, and we're going to make it work, but because that's an important number, because that is that's not a budget that includes 10 new staff
Correct.
and
Right.
15 new vans. That's literally level service to get us from one year to the next. We're just
Without
not.
any cuts.
We're not without any. Yeah, we're not making the money. I don't know. I don't know. I just think
you're correct.
that jumped out at me when I saw that the lead is the level service budget, and then the second lead is we can't afford it.
Right. Right.
We'll get there due to good work of you and Mr. Wiggin in making some decisions
Right.
and presenting them to us and us agreeing to them. But that's the story to be told.
And some of the budget details, we'll look at the state contribution estimates, some of the variables that are still, kind of up in the air, salaries, expenditures, cuts, warrants, and budget allocations. So to start with the state contributions, we're actually receiving less money from the state this year than we did last year, according to their estimates. And these are estimates; they're not finalized yet. But we're looking at a 0.66 increase in Chapter 70 aid. We're looking at that charter reimbursement of 63% increase sounds good, but when you look at, as the last, a few slides ago, we said we have 5 kids in charter school, so our reimbursement, our numbers are not large, so that 63% increase amounts to less than $12,000. So if we were going to get a 63% increase, I would prefer it to be in the Chapter 70 or in the school choice, but that's not the case. So, and also, school choice is down, as we were down 9 students, so we're looking at a 17.2% decrease there. So a total net decrease in state aid of 0.8%. Some of the variables that, what I just went over are estimates, and that's the governor's budget. There's still a long way to go before the state finalizes its budget. So, those numbers are still somewhat fluid. We have collective bargaining negotiations with Unit A, our teachers, Unit C, our paraprofessionals, custodians, and transportation. Obviously, the result of those negotiations will impact the budget. We have submitted for extraordinary relief in addition to our circuit breaker. We don't know if we will get it, and if we get it, how much we will get. In the past, when we have received extraordinary relief, the amount has been in the $90,000 area, but again, we have no idea at this time if we'll get it, and B, if we get it, how much we'll get. The choice receipts, as I mentioned, are fluid as well. The estimate is $414,000, but plus or minus there, we're not sure. And then currently we've been in a budget freeze for some time, and hoping that freeze will allow us to use some savings to prepay some things to offset next year's budget. Salaries, last year salary line was $14,920,374. Again, we're in negotiation, so we really don't know the impact on COLA and steps. We estimate the lanes at $63,539. Some of the supplemental benefits or monetary payments that come with different contracts, $50,000, the ed reform for different things that come up that impact our budget, athletic stipends at $33,210. We're expecting some savings in retirements, and we're expecting some other wage adjustments with different hiring and things like that. So the total increase for salaries is projected at $388,531 for a total salary line for FY23 of $15,308,905. The expenditures. FY22, we had $2,253,257 in expenditures. The first line, the out-of-district tuition, is much larger than last year's line item there. Last year, we had about $14,900 in that line item, so you can see the increase is significant there. We have $100,000 budgeted in prepaid tuition to offset some of those tuitions. We have the middle school SEL teacher at $69,945, increases at greater than 2%, adjustments, 2% inflation increase at $45,065, brings us to a total expenditure increase of $560,389 for a total of expenditures for level services to be $2,813,646. To get to the 4% target budget, we have to cut that expenditure line. Cutting out $261,975 will get us to an adjusted total of $2,551,671. $2,551,671, which would be a 13.2% increase. So again, the proposed salary and the proposed expenses bring us to that $18.1 million level services budget. To get to the target 4%, we would be making cuts in the amount of $261,975.
Before we go off of this, so when we've been meeting, as we've been going through, we had been talking, there was a point where we were about $500,000 between level service and 4%. And what I'm seeing now, we've got that down to
We've closed that gap, yes.
Am I correct in that the way we've done that is we are, when we say we're budgeting, what we're really doing is anticipating that we can manage this year's budget to a point where we would have $100,000 left over in order to prepay tuition.
Correct.
So it's in essence not spending money this year so that we can prepay money next year to reduce the increase. So it's that 100,000 plus, Mr. Wing, correct me if I'm wrong, we've realized we have about 194,000 in retirement savings that we can plan on.
Right.
So to get from that 500 to 261, it's really between those two. What we've done from 2 or 3 weeks ago to now to get from 500 down to 261 is anticipate retirement savings and plan a scenario of seeing $100,000 in savings.
Right, right.
While
And that's a variable too, because something can come up and,
Bob, go to the, oh, I'm sorry, finish, Mark, because then I want you
No,
to go to the
because
next one.
I think we need to reconcile 500 that we talked about a few weeks ago to now presenting 260.
I think you have two legs of the stool. I think the third leg of the stool, and part of this leg is fairly significant, is we went through a lot of different areas in great detail. One of which was ed reform. And there were many, many other areas of the budget. We went through athletic stipend. We went through lots of different areas. And we basically, in pulling those together, we said, okay, there's other areas here where we can reduce. And when we put that together with the other 2 points you've made, that's how we were able to get ourselves down from a little over $500,000, if I recall, from
Right.
at
Yeah.
one point in time to the
Yeah.
261,000. Now again, you're right, part of that does presuppose at least $100,000 in prepaid tuitions.
Bob, could you go to the next slide?
Yep.
Not to be lost in this discussion is that we capped our inflation at 2%, which it's running at 7 and 8%.
Yeah.
And we've been not increasing our inflation rate for several years. We've never really been at a place where we should be. We were closer. So part of the getting to that 261 we have to make up is severely underestimating the increase in cost to fuel and inflation. So we have to do it, but that's another place that in the grand scheme of things, it's not as big the number, but it's going to impact us.
But it's going to have it's going to start to have a large impact, right?
100%.
Because we've cut expense year over year for 5 or so years.
I believe my research has indicated 8 years.
Yeah, that
Well,
seems right.
yeah.
That seems right.
So we can buy less and less with that money.
And what we need to buy is now much more expensive.
Right.
Like it's a double whammy.
And
It catches
just-
up to us.
And just so people know that money that we're talking about goes into, just general everyday supplies for classrooms, teachers.
For example, something I think most people can relate to. When I came here, a case of copy paper that you use in your printer or, at work if you're your copier, a case of copy paper I could get fairly easily without even necessarily buying it by the pallet for as low as $18.50 a case. That's 10 reams. I got offered a really great price if I bought, I think, a half a truckload recently of $29.50.
That adds up.
Case.
Yeah.
It's almost 100%. No, it's a little less than that. It's like 80%.
Significant.
So that then begs the question of, and we did talk about this a little bit last time, because as you went through that process, is it reasonable? Are all of those reductions and assuming we can prepay tuition of $100,000, is it reasonable? I mean, if we have to, we have to, but
At what point does it impact education?
Right.
I can't honestly say it is.
Yeah.
You can't.
I cannot.
Right, and to Carrie's question, impacting education, it's going to hit. We aren't going to be able to buy the supplies
Well,
that
at some
I
point in
need.
time, we've done the supplies because we believe, we value our staff. We believe the most important thing about a classroom is the teacher or the staff person that's in it. We believe that the staff people throughout the building are all educators, regardless of what they're doing. So they're all important, every last one of them. But sooner or later, it's going to impact staffing.
Well, I was going to answer Mark's question as well. It's not the best scenario. It's the only scenario we have, but we will get to the point where we can't cut expenses anymore. And then it becomes staff.
people.
And we have worked hard over the last, I'll speak for Mark and I, since the last 11, almost 12 years at not trying to have staff go out the door. We're fortunate with retirements and some class downsizing, but we're not in that position anymore.
But do you think, I guess this is for Terry and Bob, do you think we're almost at that tipping point?
For the amount of cuts that we have to make,
Right.
like buying less paper doesn't make 261, eventually it's gonna
Sure,
come
but
to a
it can
person.
make
Yeah, so we're.
20 grand or
Right,
you know,
right, but
a
the-
fourth or fifth grade class that
Ye-
can't have handouts go
Right,
home. And
right. And so I think we are close to the tipping point.
So, I think, and we talked about it, I think this layout and this is a good explanation of where we're headed, I think we should, again, I think we're at the point because I think some of these levels probably are, critical and at a point where it's becoming unreasonable to think that we can actually do it, that we do continue to engage the conversation of, we had a $500,000 shortfall, we've gone down, we've gone through as much as we can. Personally, I'm thinking the combination of the $100,000 in prepaid tuition and all of the cuts that we've taken out of this, maybe they net, and we need to have a discussion of, the gap is really 300,000, 300 to 350, and we continue the conversation with the Finance Committee and Select Board about, is there appetite or is there available funds to get us more, to increase the budget for next year by a higher amount than 4%, given the $500,000 increase in spend.
Yeah.
We've basically closed, through the work you guys have done, we've closed 40% of that. Is there a way to help us close more of it without going down to unreasonable things and hitting staff?
Because we're looking just to close the gap. We're not looking to create a new program with 5
Right.
FTE. Like, I am concerned about that $100,000.
Yeah.
If we don't make that, and if something comes up and something breaks and we have to.
What are we doing to get there? We're in a budget freeze right now.
Yeah. And it's been a
We're in
budget freeze since probably October.
We're not buying things we need this year for the sole purpose that we can save $100,000 this year so that we can spend it next year. So and that's not even going to get us, so we're not buying supplies this year, whether it's paper, toner, whatever it is, books, so that we can have $100,000 next year just to spend the exact same amount that we spent this year.
Yes, right.
Can we just clarify too, out-of-district tuitions is special education, just for everyone, so like it's
Right.
state-mandated special education
Exactly.
placements
It's
that
not.
we cannot plan for, we don't know, can happen at the drop of a dime.
Yeah, and it's not. I think sometimes people get confused and think out of district is choice. Our kids
Well, that's
choicing
like-
somewhere
yeah,
else,
somebody,
and that's
it's not
yeah.
Tri-County. We're not talking
Exactly.
about
It's not
Tri-County.
Tri-County. It's not a Millis kid who choices into Medway. These are mandated special education costs for special programs that whose programs and services we're not equipped, staffed to run, to provide.
These programs this is all not just we're choosing not to. These are, by and large, severe special education needs that most districts, and certainly a district of our size, cannot staff for in some cases, for the one individual who would need the degree of service.
Correct.
And I think just to extend on your comment, Mr. Conrad, is that when you've been able to do it, and the TIES program is an exceptional example of this, you have started the program, and that program, quite honestly, conservatively, okay, saving the district and the community, I would guess somewhere between $600,000 and $800,000, because all of those children would have to be sent out of district, and you'd have to transport them. So that's.
And it's a great program that
It's a
they
great
started.
program.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Wonderful
Yes.
program. I mean, it's a place, he makes excuses to go there.
So Bob, can I, well, to tag onto this conversation, I hate to do this, but could you go back to one of your first slides? I made a note. I don't know what slide number it is. It's the one where you talk about funding mandates.
Oh, the budget principles?
Let me see. If you pull it back, I can.
Okay, the screen isn't as
Okay.
fast as my computer, but it should be getting back there soon.
Yeah, I think it's the budget guiding principles.
Yeah. Not sure why.
So it says while we're waiting for it to
I'm
go,
frozen up there.
it's the second to last bullet, and you said fund state and federal mandates. We're trying to. We don't have enough money in our budget to fund them, right? We have to do it, and we're moving things around. We don't. Right here is a perfect example. It's stuck on this screen. Without the tuition savings, and just bear with me, there's a sequence here. Without the tuition savings from this year to pay for that $100,000, we don't have any other place to really cut. We'd be cutting staff,
Correct.
or
Yeah,
or
right.
very close.
Right.
And maybe we would get lucky. So I understand what you're saying, but this is the bigger part of the conversation of the unfunded mandates. We're trying to fund something that we can't afford at a 4% increase because of the extraordinary cost of special education, but mostly out-of-district special education. That is required by law. There is no option. We can't we can't say no. So I know you know this, but this is also part of the normalization with other committees and districts in the town to understand what we're trying to do on an annual basis. And thank you for bringing up the TIES program. Without that, we would be in a horrendous place.
You would, well, it wouldn't have been this year, it would have probably been last year. You would have been asking the town for a deficit article.
And this is, in the out-of-district tuitions, as Kerry mentioned, is something that fluctuates and can change, if someone moves into town or if something happens and there's a profound need for a student. We do have looking forward to next year, knowing nothing is set in stone, it's highly likely that that figure would be lower next year with kids exiting. Probably about at least $200,000 less next year, assuming nothing else
changes.
changes.
Yeah, until we have a move-in.
Right,
Or
right.
there's a change in an
Based on the
existing
current
student.
population, this $500,000 increase would, whatever that brings us up to, whatever that number is, that number would come down by 200,000 the following year. All things being
All
equal.
things being the same, yeah.
It
Which-
never is.
Right.
We would-
But most years, the fluctuation that we have, even if it's an increase,
It's not this great.
it's 100 to
Right,
200,000.
Right.
We have never had a $500,000 swing.
No, and I think briefly, without getting too far afield of the public hearing presentation, I do think that also at some point in time, it's also my recommendation that the committee have a discussion with FinCom that at some point in time, not this year, but perhaps another year, in one of those years where you do have a downswing, that perhaps starting to set aside money into a special education trust that can be there, so that when you have this happen again,
Anomaly.
you have the savings account to go to. And it does not become, the kind of problem that it is this year.
I agree with that.
Agreed.
So we could potentially, really, if we didn't count on if we don't count on the 100,000, and that's through either, because it really should be sitting in supply lines somewhere this year and next year. 361,000 that we need to with a $200,000 possible drop-off the year after is if for some reason there was $360,000 available that we could get above and beyond, there's arguably a case that you could reduce that by $200,000 the following year. If it was a one-time source of funding or something else of that.
Yeah, yes.
That it was, if we can close the 361 this year as a one-time event, we wouldn't be necessarily needing the 361.
I don't disagree with that. I'm hesitant because once you say we're not going to need it, and there's a move,
Right.
I support and endorse what you're saying. You say A, and then you say B, and then B doesn't come true, you lied to us.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
said
yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I think what would, not to add any more work to your very heavy workload, but a look at just kind of, and I think we've done this, and I think you've done it, an out-of-district tuition from year to year, and I know things increase, costs increase, but it'll give us an idea of what some of those fluctuations have been. I think it's focus on just the out-of-district opposed to the total.
I think I have some history already built up.
I think we asked you for that at one
Yeah,
point when we were in trouble.
yeah. And it does run in cycles.
But this is where we think we're going to be, but this is what has happened, so we're not making a promise.
In fact, I did a little bit of that when I projected circuit breaker for you, so that shouldn't be too hard to do.
Okay, thank you, Terry.
And if nothing else, it will show that this 500,000 is an anomaly. That will.
Okay, we're in a public hearing, Bob. Sorry.
Well,
That was me.
we're in a public hearing with a frozen screen, so,
Connect from the Apple TV and then reconnect?
okay. This is the equivalent of plugging and unplugging.
Restarting.
Turning it off again.
Control Alt Delete.
All right. Get this. Glasses on. All right, we're back. Okay, now, just to sum it all up, the proposed salary and proposed expenses adding up to 18.1 million, and the 4% budget at 17.86 million. And again, on those cuts, we'd be looking at cutting the inflationary increase that we already know has been cut for a number of years, at least 8 years, and does not reflect the current inflation rate. Cutting off contracted services, looking at moving some things to revolving funds, expenses, et cetera, to get those $200,000 worth of cuts. It would also involve staff reduction. Some of these staff members were hired as a result of some of our ESSA money, but the services they provide are still needed. So we're looking at some significant cuts in the personnel area, 6.3 FTE learning facilitators, tutors, 0 FTE custodians, 1.0 instructional specialists, a 0.6 FTE ESL teacher when our ESL population is actually growing, and 0.5 FTE technology support, which has been essential this year and will be essential moving forward. And that's an example of one of those areas that will really impact what kids are able to do in classrooms, what teachers are able to provide in classrooms. And these calculations are based on the target budget. The percentages in the level services budget would be fairly similar, but it gives you an indication of where the money goes out of the budget. So we have 85.7% of the 17.86 million going to salaries, 6.2% of it going to special education costs, 4.1 for various expenses, 1.9 for utilities, 1.1% for maintenance, and 0.93% going to transportation. Another way to look at it is in costs that we have control over and costs that are fixed and mandated, contractual obligations, those special ed costs for services, etc. So 17.2 of a $17.86 million budget are those costs, and the variable costs come in at $639,195, and those are the costs that we're trying to play with to get that $261,000 cut for the most part.
But that's not a large percentage to play with.
No.
No, it's not.
That's-
It's not.
Very effective use of a graph there to show you the pie.
It's a small sliver. Then some of the warrant articles and the marijuana impact fund request for capital improvements. We're requesting a new server at $80,000, a skid steer, $62,882, a pickup truck for the same amount, and a tractor to replace the John Deere that has been here for quite some time. So $177,164 in capital improvement requests, and the marijuana impact funds, adjustment counselor, salary, middle school SEL teacher, vape detectors, and after-school drug awareness programming at $10,000 for a total of $174,262. So to recap, the level service budget is $18,122,551, which is a 5.53% increase. The target 4% budget is $17,860,576. There'll be considerable staff reductions, as I just mentioned, due to elimination of the one-time grants, and a number of these positions are still critical moving forward.
So when you say considerable staff reductions, is there anyone going out the door?
For some of those grant-funded positions, and when we hired these people, we said this is grant funding.
It was 9 full-time people, equivalent to 9 in his previous slide.
Yes.
So we have 9 FTEs. I think it was 9.4 if I did the math correct quickly. That were funded on
Yeah, that
grants.
slide
Right.
wasn't in here, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about
Yeah.
that. No, that's all right.
I think it's slide 35.
Yeah,
on ours.
it
It's
is
not-
an
just in a
instant.
No, that's fine, that's fine, I see it now.
It's represented
9.4
differently in your
FTEs
packet.
that are going out the door that we funded with one-time grants over COVID.
Okay, all right.
If we had the 18.1 number, would we be able to save those?
Some of them, not all of them.
So the 9.4 FTE cuts is not even what we're doing to keep for level service.
For the most part, correct, right. And again, these positions were hired, we were upfront with people, they know they were one-time
Right.
grants. But the need doesn't end after
Right.
the 1 year.
We had remote
And then-
learning, we needed extra people.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And we would love to try and come up with ways to keep some of them.
Because some of those, the needs, and, the money was one-time federal COVID assistance money, but some of these needs that are coming out of this
They
aren't a 1 year.
they don't end
Right.
this year. They
The
don't
supports
end
that
on
these-
June
The
30th.
supports that kids need isn't
Hasn't
on June
gone
30th.
away.
Right,
Right.
on June
Isn't
30th
solved by the
isn't
end of
going to
the year,
be
yeah.
over.
Correct,
And so
correct.
the federal government is taking this money away and basically saying, you guys figure it out.
Yep.
And unfortunately, we
So-
don't have the funds. We're not.
So Bob, I know you're almost at the end because I looked ahead, but could we go to the choice slide?
The one with the graph of choice?
Yeah, whatever, it doesn't have a number here. School choice, yeah.
Terry, you might as well have a seat because I'm sure we'll have questions for you.
And once again, it may be semantical, but I think choice funds have not been essential, they've been required, right? We've survived because of choice.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's a strong, I think you need to be clear in your statement that it's not a kind of, we're picking and choosing. That's getting us through. If we didn't have choice, if we weren't an attractive district where people came in, we'd be in a much worse place.
Right.
It's also primarily staff.
Right, we
There
have
is a bit
staff
of
who's,
programming.
Oh, yeah, the last time
salary
it was
comes
very
from-
heavy.
Primarily staffing, you'd be
We're
cutting
funding
teachers.
staff.
Yeah, you'd be
Right.
cutting teachers.
At one point, didn't we have 8 FTEs in there?
Yeah, it's in that ballpark now, a little less, I think.
I think I think over the years, I think we've moved a
tried to pull
couple
people
out,
into it.
Yeah, I think
but
it's
still,
six
even
and
if it's
seven.
6 and 7. So,
Right, right.
the word's fine, but I also think that without choice, we'd be
right,
in trouble.
But
those,
this isn't, the message is this isn't extra money that we just get that we can use to
That we just
spend.
kind of
Right,
randomly,
right.
that is
This
paying the
funds teachers.
bills. That is
exactly,
Yeah.
those slides that show class size would alter significantly.
Yeah,
If you took these teachers out, these teachers who are paid by choice, if you took them out, class sizes would be
They're in
impacted.
every single school, so they're either literally classrooms in the ground, or they're academic areas, like an English teacher or a physics teacher, I don't know about physics teacher, but you get my drift, in the middle school or high school.
And since we're talking about choice in school and student transitioning, just looking at the next 2 slides where we talk about the kids going out of district. This has been a topic, especially the last couple of years. I just look at the 19 and 20, if you combine all, the TriCounty, Norfolk Aggie, as well as the private, we went from 2 years ago being, 160. We're now at 132. So we.
so less kids are going.
Less kids
out
are
of the
leaving,
district.
which is something, as we saw, I know Mr. Mulaney and then Mr. Adicki were trying to work to kind of better sell the district to ourselves, to keep kids here.
Right.
It's showing up. So we've got kids coming in, we're collecting choice. The decline in kids going to others also has a financial benefit because it ends up is less we have to pay
Right, and that helps our chapter 78
Right.
and
in money. So
And I don't think we're there, but it could get to the point if fewer and fewer kids leave, we have less room for choice.
well,
I don't think we're there yet,
Yeah.
but you could eventually get there.
And we have been there at some grade levels.
Yeah, we've closed a couple grades down.
Yeah. All right, hopefully I don't freeze the screen again.
No, you were ahead. We went back.
We have it.
Okay, so, and then, the capital and marijuana impact funds. So that's the picture. The summary, we are looking at a challenging budget season.
But that level service budget doesn't include the 9 people we're cutting.
Correct.
Right.
And it could possibly give us some room to try and, because we're trying to keep some of those positions because they are going to be needed next year.
So
and
do we
beyond.
know like what we're targeting for if you could wave your magic wand, what are needed? So we know that, the level service budget is 6%, not 5.3.
Right.
So if 4, if we could retain 4 of the 9, or
Yeah, I don't have that figure at the top of my head. Terry could probably do his napkin math. But we have a sense of the priorities of those positions that we really feel are most needed.
I just think if we're presenting to the FinCom, we should give them that overall picture, right?
I agree.
That level set budget doesn't include the 9.4 heads that we're going to need to cut.
But in
That we'd like
fairness,
to-
that it may not be all 9.3.
No, correct.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
And I think the superintendent has a pretty clear idea of the priorities he would have out of that list. Because I know he and I have talked about it. And I'm pretty sure he's pretty clear in sort of the rank order that he would have in those positions.
But to Mrs. Roach's point, maybe we want to have another bullet up there
Because
with
percentage increase that
a
those
level
would-
service budget too that includes keeping a certain percentage of.
Because if we didn't have this $500,000 increase, we really would be able to keep the positions up to whatever our retirement savings would be. Because that, part of how we're using retirement savings now to close a gap based on.
And a good chunk, what, 176 or something?
170.
That's a good chunk of money.
With other wage adjustments of 20, so almost $200,000 that we would otherwise be in a position to say,
To retain
With-
some of those
retaining some of
grant-funded
those
positions.
grant-funded positions, staying within our 4%, we would be able to do that. Because of out of district, we have a $500,000 hole that we are using that 200,000 to offset partially. So again, it comes back to, if not for the 500,000,
Yeah.
we'd be much closer to level service and true level service,
including
these
those positions.
PSSR.
Post-COVID teaching and learning needs have changed, right? So those 9 positions, even though it would be great to keep them all, there are some that are essential still to keep going.
Yes.
To deal with the impact of COVID
Yeah.
more than
Yeah.
the actual day-to-day learning as much as how do
Bridging
we
the
make
gap
up?
of what kids lost.
And just the next steps, we'll continue to look at those variables and make adjustments. Town meeting in May, and then the final approval.
I thought that said fight for approval.
I can change
That's a
that.
Freudian slip right there.
But thank you again for the support, and I don't know why my slide is going animated there, but thanks again to the committee and to the community for the support of our students and our schools.
Excellent job to the two of you. Good job on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I like the new gym too, like the
I
new
know,
Yeah,
it
size.
looks good.
pads and
Nice
everything. That looks
stuff.
really good.
All right. Should we move on to our action items? Did Stephanie?
She's coming back. I told her to text her because she wants
Okay.
to go check on the kids.
Yeah.
So, do your action items.
Okay, so we'll move into our action items and consideration to approve our minutes from last meeting.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Catalano.
I make a motion to approve the Millis School Committee meeting minutes from March 1st, 2022.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Consideration to approve the proposed fiscal 23 school budget as presented.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Catalano.
I make a motion to approve the proposed FY23 school budget as just presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
There she comes.
All
Here comes
right,
Miss
if you want to come in
Culver.
up here whenever you're ready. No, no worries. Take your time. So we'll move into the intro.
This is not nearly as heady as what we've been discussing.
No,
You can
It'll be
relax
good.
and just
It'll be
enjoy for
good.
a few minutes. Extended Day, the enrollment is now open for the Extended Day summer program. The deadline is April 14th. At Clyde Brown, MCAS has started, so folks can check the newsletters and websites for the specific dates for all the various grades. Grade 3 students will be resuming their work with Turn Club starting April 1st. The students will be coming over my classroom to do emission spectroscopy and calorimetry with the juniors and seniors. At the middle school, the third and final trimester started this week. So that also means that the report cards for trimester 2 will be headed to On April 6th, we'll be hosting the 8th grade to 9th grade step-up night at the high school. And so there'll be a club and activities fair in the cafeteria from 6 to 6:30, and then a presentation in the auditorium to follow, with course registration starting for the 8th graders for their high school picks starting on April 7th. There is a volleyball opportunity opening up for students in grades 5 through 7, boys specifically. It is an April vacation volleyball camp. Part of the intention is to increase awareness that boys volleyball is in the spring and hopefully, drum up some additional enrollment moving forward. The middle school art club students have been creating some small handmade pieces such as bookmarks, jewelry, ceramic bowls, and they're going to be selling these items. The money is going to go to the Voices of Children, which is currently providing emergency emotional and mental health support for children in Ukraine. In grade 8, they have been studying land and sea breezes in science class, which has been kind of fun. They've been heating and cooling systems and allowing the wind to be created. And in ELA, they've been studying the Harlem Renaissance and the work of Langston Hughes. In grade 7, they just rounded out their STEAM fair with great success last week, with judges provided by various high school organizations, AP Bio, Chem Club, things of that nature. And in Ms. Cantareggi's class, they are finishing their research projects in the 1960s, the good old outsiders. And they are really just kind of doing a deep dive on the 1960s, which for those kids is a really long time ago, which is kind of fun to hear them talk about it the way I viewed the 1920s when I was in school. So it's kind of crazy. Up at the high school, we had our February Students of the Month. So grade 9 was Isabella Briones, grade 10 was Kristen Kelly, grade 11 was Adrian Heredia, and grade 12 was Carlson Cantareggi. A few more accolades to come out. Cynthia Aguijo, Crystal Flint, and Amelia Lucis were all selected to be part of the jury 2022 Massachusetts Art Education Recognition Exhibit. So that's really nice. A juried exhibit means that their work was judged and then deemed fit to belong to the exhibit, so that's great. Daisy Lyons has had her film selected to be in the Open Mind Festival. She was one of, let's see, I've got the number, I think it's 7 out of the 119 films that were submitted. And then Jaden Adams and Dulce Abreu were included in the Keeping It Real Salem Film Festival for their works. The Global Scholars Program, those members of that program are prepping for the Academic World Quest competition. So Mr. Fallon is putting them through their paces. I guess he needs something to do after basketball season wrapped up. The STEAM Scholar Class of 2024 applications have just come in, and the committee is in the process of reviewing those materials ahead of course selection, which brings me to the fact that the high school students will be getting their course selection materials this Thursday. So the buzz is already out there about what will be happening in the fall. I did the math, there's like 55 days of school left for us at the high school. I can't believe it. Local scholarships have opened up. And the students will have until April 24th to get those materials submitted. If they have questions, they can reach out to Mrs. Harkey in the counseling office. Ms. Ziemba's APUS government has been having a mock cabinet meeting simulation with each of the students taking on one of the department secretary roles, and so they're getting some real world experience there. And Amnesty International is proud to say that they raised over $300 with their lettuce fundraiser for Ukraine. On the district level, with our last announcement, they are still looking for a family to host our consular assistants from Spain. If anyone's listening and interested, you can reach out to the district Spain office, or you can reach out to Adria Osborne at middleschools.org if that is something that you're looking to do coming this fall. You don't necessarily have to have a student in the immersion program to do it. You just want to host somebody from Spain in your house. So it's an integral part of what we do, as you all know. So for those folks at home watching, it's a great opportunity. And that's what I have for tonight, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being patient with our.
It was interesting. Now I don't have to watch it on the TV later.
Yeah,
That's
there
it.
you go.
Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you.
And I have one late breaker regarding some good news from the parent volunteers that run Destination Imagination. They had that tournament this weekend, and we had 2 teams from Millis, a high school level team, and an elementary level team. Both were able to capture 2nd place in the tournament in their divisions, and they've been invited to the global finals.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's great. The secondary team was Cynthia Aguijo, Lily Cassidy, Julianne Roy, and Kayla Walsh-Makata. And the elementary school team was Tim Fay, Jack Gavigan, Parker Hemingway, Max Keppel, Charlie Randa, Joan Schneider, and Will Vaccaro. And so, and it's a parent volunteer organization that does its fantastic program. So I'd like to thank those parents too.
That's great.
job.
Congratulations.
Yeah, excellent.
All right. Moving on to the chair report. Do you have any COVID-19 updates?
COVID has not been eradicated. We still have some cases, but not widespread. I think in the past week we've had, 3 cases at Clyde Brown and 4 cases at the high school. We're continuing to monitor that. At the high school, we've also had a bit of the flu going around, so we have some kids absent because of the flu. But overall, attendance has been good, both student and teacher. So things are going well as far as that goes.
We haven't had to deal with the flu for a couple of years.
I
huh?
know.
Okay, and for the superintendent's report.
The March enrollment, we've had a few students move in. We've had some changes to choice. The slides that I put up are now inaccurate. We now have 81 choice students instead of 79. And the chart on the attendance, the enrollment was up to date at 1186, which is on March 1st we had 1181. So March has been a busy month in terms of enrollment.
financial report? Is that separate from the budget?
It is the financial report.
Or do you want to come and chat about that with us?
More numbers.
Do you want
My
this?
computer,
Yeah,
Terry?
do you have the computer?
Look at that.
Fine, Jody takes care of it.
Sometimes paper is good, huh?
Susan will take care of me.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
We can't afford it anymore.
Right,
Yeah,
27
yeah.
bucks a box.
That was not lost on me.
That's okay.
I'm causing the district money.
So I thought, obviously, in light of the budget and everything else, it was certainly time for a quarterly financial report. The good news is that I'm projecting right now a fund balance of a little over 120,000 to the good. The bad news, if there's, I don't know if I want to call it bad news.
Less good news.
That's good news. The things to watch out for, which is why we keep the freeze on, is there's a couple of aspects of it that are a little squishy, as I put it. The first is that when the marijuana funds were allocated this fall, we weren't able to hire all those positions right off. But the money was put in our budget, which is a little unusual for a warrant article. Most of the time, warrant article money is kept separately. But the town accountant put the money into our budget. I assume the same thing happened on the town side. So it's unclear what happens to that money at the end of the year if we haven't spent it all. Because it's literally, it is sitting in our budget. So I'm not necessarily sure what will happen with that. I will ask for clarification. But it's possible we're going to have to set that aside. And I'm prepared to do that if we have to. So it's not necessarily going to be a huge problem, but it is something that I have to be wary of. That's one thing. The second is, as Bob mentioned earlier, historically when we've gotten extraordinary aid, we've usually gotten a healthy chunk. And in the history would tell us around $90,000. So that's what I'm showing right now, would be what we get. I'd like to think I'm wrong on the good side, that we'll get more. But my guess is that there's a lot of districts like us that are facing the same problems, which means that it's one pie and they're going to split it up among all the different, people filing based on a formula that they have for extraordinary aid. So will we get some? Absolutely. What will we get? I still don't know. And we won't know probably, it's very late this year. Normally I would know by now. But we still don't know, and we probably won't know until sometime early mid-April at this point, if then. I hope this is not the case, because we have to spend extraordinary aid this year. It's possible we won't know before town meeting. If that's the case, we're going to be scrambling to spend it. Not that we can't do it, because we can do journal entries, but it's, makes decisions a little easier if you know what you're going to have.
So is the 90,000 part of that 120?
The 90,000 is part of the 120. And I would say some form or fashion of that money is going to be there. Whether it'll be the full 90, whether it will be more, whether it will be less is what I don't know.
Is that why you bumped it to 100? You think you can make it 100?
Yeah, I think there are other reasons that I can make it to 100. I think generally speaking what happens, it didn't happen last year, but I think last year was an unusual year. At the end of the year, we get a clearer picture of the ins and outs with staffing, and we did have a lot of periods of time where there was somebody left us, we weren't able to fill a position right away, so there may have been a pay period or 2 pay periods where we did not pay somebody for that position.
Okay.
Okay, that doesn't really, because we don't encumber right now, which is on my list of things to make sure we are able to try and do, hopefully as early as next fall, but we'll see. It doesn't really sort itself out till early June, when I start to give you that final recast budget. And that's when I really, at that point in time, I have a fixed number of pays. So for example, with teachers, at that point in time, I have maybe 2 more pays, which are easy to estimate, and I have the balloon pay, which is very easy to estimate. Okay, with paraprofessionals, I have a very limited number of pays, and by then it's kind of sorted itself all out. So again, much easier to do that final estimate. Okay, the reason, and without boring you to death, but for my, 25 words or less, the reason encumbering is so important is because if you're encumbering staff when you hire them and unencumbering them when they leave, and then encumbering the replacement, is that all those gaps show up anytime you print out a financial report. So
Okay.
that's why encumbering is such an important tool.
So if 90,000 of the 100 that we were talking about earlier is based on, I know it's confident that that's a safe number, but that just also highlights that our 100,000 is baked into money.
It's not guaranteed.
Right.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
No, it's not
So
guaranteed.
it's even more of a reason to not have it as a identified
Right.
gap closure measure that we, for the purposes of starting a conversation about how much more above 4% do we need, I think the number is 361 to 500. When you
Not
tack in
count on
when
the-
you tack in the positions too of really being, if we talk about the ESSR positions plus this 100,000, you're back closer to 500,000.
Especially if
We
we're not
were
going to know
2
until
months ago.
April, right? Because
Yeah, you won't know till-
So you're saying take the 100 off?
yeah.
I think we should take it off, but say that there's a potential.
Yeah, but it's less
But
of
it's
a-
not guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed.
Right.
It's one of those variable
Right,
things.
it could be
that-
40 and then we don't have it, or it could be 120 and it'd be great.
Right,
but we
right,
don't-
right.
But we don't know.
Could I say it maybe a little differently? And maybe I'm
Sure.
maybe I'm mishearing things, which is very possible. That you're kind of moving it to a cut. So in other words, rather than showing it as a prepay, your cuts are $361,000.
Right.
Yes. That
Okay.
the
Taking
gap.
$100,000
Take the 100,000 out as a prepay and throwing it.
And maybe put a little star
then-
next to it
Right,
saying
like,
that
yeah.
So-
we anticipate
Like-
some sort of money.
And how do
but
we get
just don't
those
know.
cuts down to zero? Potentially, we have 100 grand, but other than that,
Right, so like, again, when we met last time, we were at a $500,000 shortfall.
Right.
And we were starting the dialogue of, we're gonna have to have a discussion of, is there more money available beyond 4% through town funds?
Right.
We're saying, okay, we've identified and are extremely confident in the salary savings that we can help offset, which, but then on the other hand, we have these ESSR needs that we're losing out on.
Mhm.
So,
That wasn't part of the original 500,000.
right,
It's not.
No.
right,
that's right.
But-
Great, I just
but,
wanted to make that.
right, so, if we start at 500, we have a truly identified salary savings, but then the next step was this 100,000 prepaid, but that's
not
big-
definitive.
That's not definitive, so really it's 360. And it's not definitive 100,000, and it also
Right.
takes into account, we've gutted all inflation and any cost, expenses and a spending freeze now to hope to be break even for next year.
According to the superintendent, we've been on a spending freeze since October.
Yes, that's correct.
So we did 4 months of the year. No, yeah,
And-
4.
And just, to be clear, and I know Terry's reiterated this when he discussed the budget freeze, it doesn't mean we don't spend money on
Right.
anything. If there's an educational need,
Safety, security.
that
Yep.
we've been spending money on that.
Right.
It's the things that, would be helpful. We want to try something out, things like that. We haven't been able to do any of that since October.
And we tend to do things, now, we made a few exceptions to the rules, so for example, when supply chain issues came up, I usually use a just-in-time inventory for like, things like printer cartridges and copier cartridges. We couldn't afford to do that, because we weren't gonna be able to get them. So I had to flex that a little bit, so we're sitting, at least we were sitting on a little bit of inventory there, and that's just because, and again, those are
You
tools.
can't get 'em.
Right, they're tools. They,
Right.
we need to
and
have
it's
them
going to
work.
get used.
Right, they get used, we need to have them work. The other thing I would just reiterate, because I think it's an important point, is Mark has mentioned the $500,000. He's also mentioned the retirement. Now, if you didn't have the $500,000 to deal with, your retirement would fund approximately half of those cuts, the staffing cuts we talked about, and you'd probably might not get a 2% increase for expenses, but you'd get a little bit of something, maybe a 1% increase in expenses, if my mental math was working correctly. Usually on those kinds of things, I'm pretty good. So, I think that's important to know, because in all other years, $190,000 of staffing reductions, that's your staffing savings that you'd have, you'd be cheering in the streets. Not this year.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Terry.
We do for negotiations.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we adjourn to executive session for the purpose of contract negotiation, planning for union and non-union personnel, not to return to open session.
Second.
Ms. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
Yes.
Mr. Gallow?
Yes.
Yes, we are adjourned until next week, actually, we're meeting, right?
April 5th, I think, is the next.
No, 2 weeks.
Seven, what time are you meeting?
At what
On
time?
the 5th, you don't go back to 7:30?
Let's go to 7, right?
Basketball's over.
Actually, have it
Yeah,
on
let's
the
go.
29th and not the 5th, but I have it on my calendar as the 12th and
I think that was, we adjusted.
Yeah, March has three Tuesday. It has 5 Tuesdays,
yeah.
and so
Three. Lucky us.
so we
we're
did
gonna do-
two in March.
So are we gonna do the 5th and the 12th?
5th and the
26th?
no 5th and the 26th.
Okay, so we're getting rid of the 12th. Okay,
Yeah.
just
So, 7 o'clock.
7
7 o'clock.
Does that fit your schedule, Mark?
And then I don't know if you can, I can't see Susan because she's behind the pole, but Susan Sani, Susan,
Oh, we adjourned.
Yeah.
Virtual?